Listen, because this one is not like the others. For years now, the internet has watched Blueface turn every single chapter of his personal life into a public spectacle, and for years, people laughed it off. The chaos was entertainment. The dysfunction was content. Whenever Blueface did something unhinged on camera, the timeline shrugged, clipped it, and moved on, because that is just what Blueface does. Right? Wrong. Because this week, something shifted. A brand new baby entered the world. A little boy who has not even been on this earth long enough for his first doctor's appointment. And within hours, not days, not weeks, hours, the internet stopped laughing and started asking a much darker question. What kind of environment did this child just land in? Nevaeh has just given birth to her son, Junior. And before that baby could even settle into his first full day of life, Blueface was already at the center of a wave of clips that have people genuinely disturbed. Not amused. Disturbed. We are talking about a grown man standing in a delivery room making comments so strange that even his most loyal defenders went quiet. We are talking about a newborn being picked apart by strangers before he has even had his first bath. And we are talking about a mother who did something shockingly gracious and is somehow being punished for it. So let's get into all of it. The birth. The delivery room behavior that crossed a line nobody can uncross. The moment Blueface looked into a camera and said something that made half the internet's skin crawl. And the comment section war now being waged over a child who cannot even hold his own head up yet. Trust me, by the end of this, you are going to understand exactly why so many people keep repeating the same 4 words. This ends badly. Now, before we even touch the clips that have everybody spiraling, you need the context, because context is everything here. This is not a couple with a clean slate welcoming their first baby in peace. This is Blueface, a man whose romantic history has played out like a reality show with no producers, no script, and no off switch. And this is Nevaeh, a woman who just went through the most physically demanding experience a human body can endure, while the father of her child was, by multiple accounts, arriving from an entirely different situation. According to people who were tracking the timeline closely, Blueface reportedly spent the days right before the birth in the company of Chrisean. Yes, that Chrisean. And allegedly went more or less directly from dropping her off at the airport to walking into a hospital room to watch his son be born. Let that marinate for a second. A woman is in active labor, and the man walking through the door has just wrapped up a weekend with the other central figure in this never-ending triangle. In any normal universe, that man does not make it past the maternity ward elevator. And yet Nevaeh let him in. Not just into the hospital, into the room. Into one of the most intimate, vulnerable, sacred moments of her entire life. And you know what? That was grace. That was a new mother making a decision that had nothing to do with her own feelings, and everything to do with her son having his father present on day one. Say what you want about Nevaeh, but in that moment, she showed a level of maturity that Blueface has never once demonstrated on camera. Hold on to that, because the way she is being repaid for it is genuinely staggering. Let's set the scene properly, because the first clips that surfaced were genuinely wholesome, and that is exactly what makes the turn so jarring. The room was packed with love. You have Nevaeh in the bed mid-labor, surrounded by the women of her family, and the energy is pure comedy in the best possible way. Her mother is joking about claiming every title in the building, godmommy and grandma, all of it. Somebody is fussing about baby hairs, and not the newborns, mind you. Pausing the miracle of childbirth for a quick edge check, because priorities. There is laughter, there is chaos. There are people shouting encouragement while Nevaeh insists the baby is doing the pushing all by himself. It is the kind of beautifully messy family moment that money cannot stage. And floating through the middle of it all is Blueface, playing the role of supportive dad, camera ever present, catching every angle. Senior and Junior in the same room at last, somebody jokes. Everybody is smiling. For about 10 minutes, the internet got to see what this family could look like if the chaos ever took a day off. It did not. Because then the baby started feeding. And that is when Blueface said the thing that has now been clipped, reposted, and dissected across every platform on the internet. As newborn Junior latched on and nursed for one of the very first times in his life, Blueface looked over and asked, "And I need you to sit with this," whether he could try. Try what exactly? That is the question the entire internet is now asking, because the implication hanging in that hospital room was unmistakable. He followed it up by insisting it was, quote, his turn. His turn. A grown man. In a delivery room. Jockeying for position at a feeding newborn like he was waiting his turn at a water fountain. And look, the people in that room laughed it off, because what else do you do in a moment like that? Nevaeh handled it with the exhausted patience of a woman who has clearly learned that managing Blueface is a full-time job on top of the full-time job of giving birth. But the internet was not laughing. Because this was not a one-off joke that landed wrong. This was a pattern, and once people started pulling the thread, the whole sweater unraveled. He did not drop it. That is the part the defenders keep conveniently skipping over. A normal person makes one awkward joke, reads the room, and never brings it up again. Blueface circled back to it. Multiple times. At one point he started telling the room that he had something to offer the baby too, riffing about having tea instead of milk, angling for skin-to-skin position, trying to press this hours-old infant against his bare chest, while continuing a bit that had already made everyone uncomfortable. Even the people filming started sounding uneasy. You can hear the energy in the room curdle from celebration into something nobody wanted to name out loud. And remember who this man had allegedly spent the previous weekend with. Remember where he had reportedly just come from. People online were quick to point out the obvious. A newborn's immune system is basically non-existent in those first days. And here is a grown man with, charitably, a questionable hygiene reputation, trying to press his skin against a baby who cannot so much as lift his own head. Mothers in the comments were horrified. Nurses were horrified. Even people who have defended Blueface through every scandal he has ever manufactured could not find a way to spin this one. Doctors and nurses who watched those clips were quick to point out what should be obvious. A newborn in his first days has essentially no immune defenses, and hospitals have visitation hygiene guidance for a reason. Every pediatrician on the planet will tell you the same thing. Fresh babies and questionable hygiene do not mix, and the first days are the most delicate window of a human life. This is not snark. This is settled, boring, universal medical consensus. And it collided, on camera, with a man who treats guidance the way he treats every other rule, as a suggestion for other people. Now, here is the thing that really sent the discourse into overdrive. Because woven into these same clips is a moment that would be headline news if any other public figure did it. Right there in the hospital, within the orbit of a woman who had literally just delivered a human being, Blueface decided it was the appropriate time to start making comments about Nevaeh's body and cracking jokes about the 6-week mark. The doctors say 6 weeks. He heard a countdown clock. Sir, the woman is in a hospital gown with a newborn on her chest, her body still actively recovering from the most violent, beautiful thing a body can do. And this man's instinct, his instinct, was to turn the room into open mic night at the worst comedy club imaginable. And before anybody says that is just how he jokes, ask yourself why every single one of his jokes seems to orbit the same subject. Ask yourself why a new mother cannot get through her child's first day of life without being reduced to a punchline in front of her own family. There is a difference between playful and pathological, and that difference is called knowing the room. Blueface has never once known the room. He only knows the camera. And look at what Nevaeh did to bring this baby here, because the contrast matters. In her own retelling, this was not some passive experience where she lay back and let medicine do the work. This was a woman on a mission. She talked about walking herself into labor, the membrane sweep, the birthing ball for 20 minutes straight, tablespoons of castor oil, cup after cup of raspberry leaf tea, and a late-night Taco Bell run that apparently served as the final trigger before the contractions came rolling in back-to-back. That is not a detail to skip over. That is a portrait of a mother so ready, so committed, so locked in on meeting her son that she willed her own body across the finish line and then laughed about it through the exhaustion, burrito in hand. That is the woman the internet has chosen to nitpick this week. That is the woman whose newborn is being medically diagnosed by strangers in a comment section. The woman who did everything right. But okay, in the interest of fairness, and I am nothing if not fair, there is one clip where Blueface almost resembles a functional adult. At one point he steps in and insists on wheeling the baby's bassinet himself, telling Nevaeh to sit down, to rest, that she just gave birth and should not be lifting or pushing anything. And for about 90 seconds, the mask slips the other way, and you can see the outline of the man he could be if the cameras were never invented. People pointed at that clip and said, see, he does care. Look at him stepping up. But here's my question. If the kindness only shows up when the live stream is running, is it kindness, or is it choreography? Because notice what happened next. Notice how quickly the tone snapped right back. Within the same stretch of footage, he is bickering over who gets to hold the baby, telling the room the child is his too, sparring with Nevaeh while she is literally still in her hospital gown trying to recover. At one point, the back and forth over who controls the moment got so pointed that she had to remind him that her baby deserved his peace after everything. Her baby, his peace. A mother, hours out of labor, already running defense. Blueface cannot let a single quiet moment exist without stamping his name on it. Even tenderness has to go through him first. And that, right there, is the whole problem in miniature. This is a man who experiences his own children as audience-facing props in a show where he is the star, and a newborn, brand new, defenseless, unable to consent to any of it, has just been cast in the latest season. Now, let's talk about the part of this story that genuinely made my blood boil, and it is not even Blueface. It is us. It is the internet. Because while all of this was unfolding, the comment sections turned into something truly ugly, and this time the target was not the grown man performing for the camera. The target was the baby. A baby. Let me say it plainly. A child who, at the time of some of these comments, had not been alive for a full rotation of the earth, and strangers on the internet were already dissecting him like a specimen. People were analyzing the sound of his cry, comparing it to Chrisean's son, claiming they could hear something wrong with him. People were zooming in on his skin tone, pointing out that he looked a little purple in his first photos, spinning that into medical theories as if they earned a doctorate through a comment section. Anybody who has ever actually been around a newborn knows that a fresh baby often arrives with a bluish or purplish tint that settles within hours. It is one of the most normal things in the entire universe of childbirth. But normal does not trend. Normal does not get engagement. So instead, a newborn's completely standard first-day appearance became evidence in a trial conducted by people who have never been in the same state as this child. And the hypocrisy? Absolutely deafening. Because some of these exact same accounts, these exact same amateur pediatricians, had nothing to say when there were actual documented reasons for concern in this extended family saga. Y'all remember, when Chrisean's son was born, the conversation around that pregnancy involved allegations of drinking and smoking the entire way through, and reports that the poor baby arrived already battling the effects of substances he never asked for. Where was this forensic energy then? Where were the zoom-ins and the thread analyses and the think pieces? Because I remember a whole lot of silence, a whole lot of looking the other way, from the very same crowd now losing its mind over a healthy baby with a normal cry and a standard newborn skin tone. Make it make sense. You cannot. It was never about the children's well-being. It is about which mother the internet has decided to hate this month, and right now the crosshairs landed on Nevaeh. Which brings us to the narrative they are building about her, because this is where the story flips from disturbing into genuinely sinister. Almost the moment Junior arrived, a certain corner of the internet started pushing a brand new storyline. Nevaeh is going to be controlling. Nevaeh is going to gatekeep the baby. Nevaeh is going to use her son as leverage. Watch her, they said. She is the type. And I have to be honest with you. I read those comments and I laughed. Because controlling? She let this man into her delivery room. She let a man who, by every public account, had spent the preceding days running around with his on-again, off-again ex walk straight into the most sacred moment of her life. Also, her son would not spend his first day on earth fatherless. That is the opposite of controlling. That is a woman bending so far backward for her child that her spine should qualify for workers' compensation. If Nevaeh were actually the vindictive gatekeeper they are describing, Blueface would have been watching that birth through a phone screen like everybody else. But you want to know the real truth underneath that whole talking point? It is not an observation. It is a preemptive strike. They are laying the track now, so that the first time Nevaeh sets a single boundary, the first time she says no, you cannot put my infant on a live stream. No, you cannot bring whoever you were with last weekend around my newborn. No, my son is not content. They can point and scream, see? We told you. She is controlling. It is the oldest trick in the manipulation playbook. Label the woman's future boundaries as crazy in advance, so that when she finally draws a line, the jury has already been rigged. And if she does end up guarding that baby like the last slice of cake at a family function, good. Honestly, somebody in that child's life has to be the wall, because it is painfully clear the father plans to be the wrecking ball. Now let us address the defenders, because they exist, and their talking points have been consistent. It was a joke, they say. He was just playing. You are reading too much into it. He was happy. It was the birth of his son. People celebrate differently. Fine. Let us steelman that for a moment. Say it was a joke. Here is the problem with the joke defense. Jokes have timing, jokes have an audience, and jokes have an off switch. A joke is one quip, one laugh, and done. What Blueface did in that room was not a joke. It was a recurring bit that he kept returning to like a comedian with one line and no self-awareness, escalating each time the room got quieter. Watch the full sequence of clips, and you can literally track the discomfort rising, the nervous laughter thinning out, Nevaeh's patience visibly draining, family members steering the conversation anywhere else. Everyone in that room was sending the signal to stop. He either could not read it or did not care, and honestly, I am not sure which option is worse for a man who is now responsible for 2 children. And this is the part nobody wants to say out loud, so I will say it. People who have followed this family for a long time have been raising questions about Blueface's instincts around the children in his orbit for a while now. Not accusations with paperwork, whispers, patterns, moments clipped and debated. The way he performs fatherhood for the camera versus how he behaves when he thinks the moment is casual. The way boundaries with him always seem to be located somewhere past where everyone else's are. Every single time one of these moments surfaces, it gets memory hold under an avalanche of new chaos. Because chaos is this man's native habitat, and there is always more of it coming. But the internet never forgets. The internet archives. And this week, a whole lot of archived moments got stitched back together into a picture that is very hard to unsee. The receipts do not expire. That is the thing about living your life as content. Every moment you sell to the internet stays in the internet's inventory forever, and the internet loves nothing more than a retrospective. Already, the compilation videos are being cut. The timelines are being drawn up. People are placing this week's delivery room footage side by side with years of prior incidents and asking the question that nobody in that family wants to answer. At what point does a pattern stop being a collection of isolated jokes and start being a diagnosis? Because one awkward comment is a moment. A decade of them is a character study. And the character being studied just became a father again. Even the people in his own orbit seem to sense it. Watch how the family members who usually rush to defend Blueface in real time have been notably careful with their wording this round. The usual full-throated protection has been replaced with hedging, with let's just focus on the baby statements, with the kind of diplomatic silence that tells you everything while saying nothing. When your own built-in defense squad starts choosing their words like they are testifying under oath, that is not nothing. That is the sound of people who know the footage exists and know exactly how it looks. Think about the name for a moment. Junior. This child has not spoken a word, not slept a full night, not seen the outside of a hospital, and he is already carrying his father's name on his tiny shoulders. Now, plenty of families pass names down, and it is a beautiful tradition. But a name is not just a sound, it is an inheritance. An inheritance cuts both ways. This little boy did not just inherit a name. He inherited a search history. He inherited a comment section. He inherited years of footage, feuds, and filings that existed long before he did. One day, that child is going to type his own name into a search bar, and the results are going to tell him a story about his father that no amount of money can edit. What gets uploaded in the delivery room stays searchable in the 4th grade. Remember that. And zoom out for a second, because none of this exists in a vacuum. We are living in the era of the newborn content economy, where a birth is not just a birth, it is a launch. The announcement post, the first photo reveal, the delivery room vlog, the name debate, the paternity discourse, every beat is inventory, and inventory gets monetized. We have watched this playbook run across family channels and celebrity couples for years now, and the research on what it does to the children at the center of it is only getting darker. Child psychologists have been sounding the alarm about kids raised as recurring characters before they can speak, and lawmakers in multiple states have started passing bills specifically to protect the earnings and privacy of children featured in monetized content. That is where the culture is. And into that exact conversation drops a baby whose first hours of life were streamed, clipped, and argued over before his first pediatric checkup. Junior did not go viral. Junior was viraled. There is a difference, and that difference is a parent who chooses the upload button anyway. And can we talk about the triangle? Because the triangle is the engine of this entire machine. The same week his son was born, the storyline still somehow revolved around Chrisean. The airport run, the weekend, the endless gravitational pull back to the most volatile relationship in internet history, right on the doorstep of his child's birth. There was a baby shower, balloons, gifts, family, the whole production, and according to the timeline people pieced together, the man's itinerary that week included quality time with his most famous ex and a personal airport drop-off before he ever made it to the hospital to meet his son. Priorities are a language. People tell you exactly who they are through their scheduling. And what this particular schedule said, in bold print, was that even the birth of his child came second to the franchise. The franchise must always be fed. Even the maternity ward is just another set. Junior was not even a day old, and he was already the 3rd most discussed person in his own birth story, behind his father's behavior and his father's ex. Imagine that being your origin story. Imagine your first ever headline being about everything except you. And I do not want to let the audience off the hook either, because none of this works without us. Blueface is not an anomaly. He is a business model. Every outrageous moment he has ever delivered was purchased, in real time, with views and clips and quote posts and reaction videos. Yes, like this one. I am not exempt and neither are you. The market sends one clear signal to people like him. Weirder pays more. Cross the line, and the line moves, and the check clears. So when people ask how a man walks into a delivery room and behaves like that, The honest answer is that he has been given no reason, ever, in his entire public life, to behave any other way. The room says stop. The metrics say go. And he has only ever listened to one of those. So now the question becomes, where does this go from here? Because I have studied this pattern for a long time, and I can tell you exactly how these stories arc. The newborn phase is the honeymoon. The clips are cute. The engagement is high. Everybody is performing their best selves for the timeline. Then the novelty fades. The views normalize, and the machine demands escalation. It always demands escalation. And when the person at the center of the machine is someone whose entire career is built on never letting the chaos stop, the people around him stop being family and start being fuel. We have watched it happen in real time with everyone else who entered this man's atmosphere. Every single one of them came out the other side changed, and not for the better. That is why so many people looked at a hospital room full of balloons and newborn onesies and felt dread instead of joy. It was never really about one weird comment at a feeding. It is about what that comment reveals. A man who cannot locate a boundary even in a delivery room, an audience trained to reward him every time he crosses one, and a brand new baby positioned at the exact center of the collision between the two. The laughter in those clips was real, the congratulations were real, the love in that room from Nevaeh and her family was real. But so was everything else. So was the pattern. And patterns do not care about baby showers. Patterns do not pause for paternity. Patterns just repeat and repeat and repeat, until the day comes that we are all back here, watching the next clip, saying we saw it coming from a mile away. And I already know the questions coming. So let me answer them now. Why does it matter what he said in a private moment? Because he sold the private moment. The second you point a camera at it and upload it, it is not private. It is product, and product gets reviewed. Aren't you just hating? I want this man to prove me wrong more than I want to be right. Nothing would make me happier than a follow-up video in 5 years about how wrong everybody was. But hope is not a strategy, and history is not on his side. What about Nevaeh's choices? Nevaeh is a grown woman who made a grown woman's decision to give her son his father on day one. Respect it. The grown man in the room, however, is not exempt from review just because somebody let him in the building. So, now I want to hear from you, because the comments on this one are going to be a battlefield, and I already know it. Is Nevaeh a fiercely protective new mother doing exactly what any sane woman would do? Or is the internet right to be watching her with suspicion? Is Blueface just an unfiltered dad whose humor lands wrong? Or did everybody just witness a red flag waving in high definition over a newborn's bassinet? And be honest, when you saw that clip, did you laugh or did your stomach drop? Sound off below, because I read every single one. And listen, if you think the delivery room was chaotic, you are not ready for what reportedly went down around that baby shower, because the guest list drama alone could be its own documentary. We will get into all of it. Make sure you are here for it, because this story is just getting started. And something tells me, something I would love to be wrong about, that this ends badly. Now, let's zoom all the way out, because this story is bigger than one delivery room. We are living through the golden age of the transparency economy, where celebrities have been trained to hand over every last scrap of their private lives in exchange for relevance, and the ones who refuse get punished by the algorithm for it. Think about what that means for a baby. A grown man chooses to monetize his chaos. That is his right. A grown woman chooses to let the father of her child into the delivery room. That is her right. But a newborn chooses nothing. A newborn is drafted. Junior did not sign a release form. Junior did not negotiate a rate. Junior's first contract was signed in somebody else's handwriting, before the ink on his footprints was even dry. And every clip of him that circulates now, every zoom, every freeze frame, every comment section diagnosis, is a deposit into an account he never opened and can never close. That is the part of the transparency economy nobody puts in the thumbnail. The audience gets the content. The child gets the archive. Forever. And I keep coming back to the psychology of it, because people keep asking why Nevaeh stays so composed. Watch those clips again, not for Blueface, but for her. Watch how she redirects him without breaking her smile. Watch how she absorbs every inappropriate comment and converts it into calm, because there is a room full of family, a camera rolling, and a newborn on her chest. And she has decided that this baby will not remember his first day as a fight. That is not weakness. That is not naivety. That is a woman running emotional triage in real time, and doing it so smoothly that half the internet mistook her discipline for approval. Do not confuse a mother's composure with consent to the chaos. She was not co-signing the performance. She was containing it. There is a difference, and that difference is the entire story. Here is the other thing people keep dancing around. So let me just say it directly. The delivery room is a sacred space. and it is sacred for a reason that has nothing to do with sentimentality. It is the one room where a human being is at their absolute most defenseless. The mother, mid-recovery, body wide open, hormones in freefall. The baby, minutes old, immune system brand new, dependent on every adult in sight. Every culture on Earth understands that you behave a certain way in that room. You lower your voice. You soften your edges. You check your ego at the door, because for one day, nothing in that room is about you. Blueface walked into the most sacred room in the human experience and did what he does everywhere else. He made it about himself. He treated the sanctity of that space the way he treats every boundary, as a suggestion that applies to other people. And the scariest part? He did it effortlessly, casually, like a man who has never once in his life been told the room was not his. And the ripple effect is already moving. Family group chats are lit up. Fan pages are picking sides. The same people who spent last week celebrating the pregnancy announcement are now scrubbing through delivery footage like investigators at a crime scene, timestamping every comment, building their cases. The commentary channels are eating. The reaction videos are multiplying. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, a mother is trying to learn her son's feeding schedule and a baby is trying to learn how to be alive. Neither of them asked to be the main character of the internet's weekly drama cycle. Both of them are. That is the machine. The machine does not care that somebody just had a baby. The machine only cares that somebody just had content. I want to say one more thing to the new moms watching, because I see you in these comments every week. You know that feeling in those first hours, the terror, the awe, the way the whole world shrinks down to one tiny face and one overwhelming instinct to protect it from everything. Now imagine trying to feel that feeling while a camera sits in the corner of the room. Imagine knowing that your most vulnerable moment is being evaluated in real time by hundreds of thousands of strangers, that your child's first cry is being compared to another baby's first cry, that your body's hardest day is somebody else's engagement metrics. That is the reality Nevaeh just lived through, and whatever else you think about her, about this family, about any of it, she deserves to hear it said plainly. Congratulations, Mama. You did it. You brought him here safely. You held that room together, and you kept your son's first day gentle even when the environment around you was anything but. That took strength most people will never have to summon. So where does that leave us? With a beautiful, healthy baby boy. A mother who showed more grace in one afternoon than some people show in a lifetime. A family that showed up. And a father who showed up too, but brought the circus with him, because the circus is the only thing he knows how to bring. The internet will keep arguing. The clips will keep circulating. The theories will keep evolving. But underneath all of it sits one simple, uncomfortable question that nobody in that family seems willing to answer. When the cameras finally turn off, what is left? Because a baby cannot be raised by a storyline. A child cannot be parented by a comment section. And a family cannot survive on engagement alone. Something is going to give. It always does. And when it does, remember this moment. Remember that we saw the shape of it early, right there in a hospital room, hidden in plain sight between the laughter and the balloons. The warning signs were not subtle. They never are. We just have to decide whether we are watching to learn or watching to fuel it. Choose carefully. That baby's archive is already open. And this story, believe me, is just getting started. And understand something about the history here, because the people yelling coincidence have clearly not been keeping score. This is not a man with one bad week on his record. This is a man whose entire public existence has been a highlight reel of escalation. The arrests, the viral brawls, the live-streamed meltdowns, the relationship that played out like a demolition derby with a newborn strapped in the passenger seat. Every single time, the internet said, okay, this is the one that finally wakes him up. And every single time, he came back louder, stranger, and more emboldened, because the data taught him one lesson and one lesson only. There is no floor. Not one. Every line he crossed became the new starting line. So when people act shocked that the delivery room got weird, I have to ask, based on what evidence would it not? Shock implies surprise, and there is nothing surprising left. There is only the pattern, doing what patterns do. And that is exactly why the women in that delivery room deserve their own paragraph. Because while the internet fixated on the circus, something quietly beautiful was happening in the background. Look at that room again. Grandma front and center, cracking jokes and claiming titles. Godmommy energy on full display. Aunties and cousins orbiting that bed like a security detail made of pure love, fixing edges, passing phones, laughing through the contractions. That is what the village is supposed to look like. That is the blueprint. Generations of women circling one mother and one baby, absorbing the chaos so she does not have to carry it, turning a hospital room into a fortress of noise and joy. If Junior grows up wrapped in that energy, the laughter, the protectiveness, the we have each other backbone that no amount of money can manufacture. Then this story does not have to end the way the cynics are predicting. That is the hope sitting quietly in the corner of every single one of those clips. And I refuse to skip over it just because hope does not trend. Because make no mistake, the cynics are loud, and some of them have receipts worth respecting. The family channels of the last decade have left a trail of children who grew up to tell the world exactly what it cost them to be raised as recurring characters. The anxiety, the lost childhoods, the strangers who knew their names before their classmates did. Those kids are adults now, and their testimony is unanimous. The archive never forgets, and it never forgives either. Every clip uploaded today is a debt that comes due in somebody's adolescence. Junior's balance opened at birth, and the deposits have already started. The people holding the camera get the views today. The baby gets the invoice in 10 years. That is the math nobody in the transparency economy wants to do out loud. So let this be the moment somebody finally does it. The bill always arrives. The only question is who is standing there when it does, and whether the village in that delivery room is strong enough to stand between this child and the machine that is already learning his name.